Good evening, everyone. Happy Sunday. My name is Ravi, and I'm the host of the Why Not IAM podcast, where we bring in identity experts from around the world and share their knowledge so that it helps you grow further in your IAM career. In this episode, we are talking to Sal Mineo, who is an IAM architect with 20 plus years of experience into identity and access management. And we have already done the first part. If you are new, please go and have a look on the first part where we have covered a lot of topics around the roles of an IAM engineer, Sal's journey from working as an analyst to working as an IAM architect, and many more. And in this episode, we have discussed about SCIM, we have discussed about FIDO, we have discussed about why do an organization need an IAM, how can they plan about what is workforce IAM, what is identity proofing, and many more. This is definitely going to blow your mind with the level of discussion that we have had here. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. I'm your host, Ravi, and I'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to India's first identity podcast. Why not IAM?
The user is put into that group in Active Directory. When Ping Federate, when its SCIM provisioning cycle runs, will check that group and notice that the group's membership has changed, either additions or deletions or both, and then run the required commands to send requests to the vendor's API endpoint to either create or remove those users on the vendor side. So very kind of basic explanation there, but it's monitoring your LDAP for changes. There's different algorithms that can be used for that. And then when the SCIM engine realizes that the group has been changed, it runs through the group to see what has changed. Okay, there's a new user in there. Robbie, he's not been provisioned to Slack before. I'm going to send an API request to the SCIM endpoint at Slack that says, create a new user, Robbie. He's part of this department. And then on the vendor side, when they receive that SCIM request, not only have they created a user account for Robbie, so now Robbie can SSL into Slack without error, but because we've sent the department or team or whatever other SCIM attribute the vendor supports, they can then be provisioned to specific Slack channels within Slack. And not only can you authenticate, but you are automatically a member of the HR group and the HR Slack channel. So that's how, like a quick explanation.
So basically, if I summarize this, it is a way of provisioning, like we have manual provisioning, where applications can go and create users manually on the application side during the SSO process. This is one way of automating this entire provisioning cycle, where you're relying on the identity provider, which is Ping Federate in our case, where if you're trying to access as a new user from a user perspective, there is auto provisioning that is happening both on the application side as well as on the IDP side, and the backend developers do not have to create the manual, kind of automating the entire provisioning process.
If you're a new employee to the company, maybe there is some other provisioning done by something like SailPoint that puts you in the Slack group on creation of your account, right? Organizations use IGA software like SailPoint to provision the account and put them in the appropriate directory groups that they belong to as a member of the HR team, for example. And then that's typically done before you start at the organization, right? So on day one of you joining and going to work and you open up your laptop, you log in for the first time and you open up Slack, your account is already at Slack and it's already provisioned to the HR group because part of the governance before you joined put you in Active Directory and put you in the HR, and then Ping Federate picked it up from there and makes the SCIM calls.
Okay. And is that what we call as birthright access? So when you said like if a new user joins in, they may be a part of the group already. Is that what we call as birthright access, where someone gets access by default? Okay. Because I had a podcast session with a SailPoint architect, right? And yeah, you should listen to it. It really gives you a complete understanding of the SailPoint side of the world, which even I never had exposure to. So definitely something worth listening. Moving on to the some of the use cases side, right? As an architect, you have definitely faced a lot of customers. So one thing that as an organization, who decides to go with an IDP, what are some of the things that they should focus on before bringing in an identity platform inside the organization? Is there like a top 5 or top 3 things that they should evaluate before even thinking about a solution that they want to get with?
Sure. I'll say that different vendors, there's a lot of commonality to the solutions that they can provide, right? Like SAML's OIDC is always right. There may be different implementations and stuff like that. And then there are niche use cases or integrations that some vendors do better than others. Also, so you need to understand, hey, what are my use cases? Not just today, but where do I want to be? What advanced use cases do I want to implement maybe 2 years from now or 3 years or even 5 years from now, right? Hopefully it doesn't take you that long to get to your goals, but definitely understanding your use cases before you even look at an IAM vendor is you're going to want to go with the IAM vendor that can meet those use cases. And then also, if there are multiple, which there probably will be, which one meets them the best way? Different organizations have different kind of internal policies or requirements that need to be met in terms of compliance. Banking customers, for example, are different than just a run-of-the-mill organization that just wants to do SSO or Regeneron, right? Which Regeneron obviously has compliance requirements in terms of pharmaceuticals. Like all pharmaceutical companies have like e-signature kind of requirements, authentication during applying an e-signature. That was one of the big ones I implemented there at Regeneron. So understanding your particular use cases, number one, is priority. Then it's okay. We as an organization want to implement IAM and authorization, et cetera, to be more secure, all the good things, right? Do we have the staff to run it?
Okay.
Right. I think that a lot of customers that I don't want to say a lot, oftentimes customers that I met with, they didn't have staff that were properly trained, either on the concept or on the particular platform that they selected, in my case, Ping. But they need to have staff that can run your software. You can't rely on your vendor to do everything for you unless you offload it to them. And you can have a fully managed solution, but whether it's by Ping or a Ping partner. But yeah, the question remains, do we have the staff to run this? Especially the big thing these days is a lot of customers want to run Ping software on DevOps, right? They want to containerize it. Well, do you already have a well-versed DevOps team and DevOps practice in your environment? Are you starting your DevOps journey on your IAM platform, which I always caution against? You don't want to learn DevOps on your most secure kind of critical stage one here software. So that's a big thing, is having the right personnel. That's a big consideration, I would say. And if you don't, how do you get them, or how do you get your existing personnel trained? And that could also be extended to implementing the software. Do I have the team and the time and the resources to get my implementation where I need it to be by this date? Or should I hire a professional services team, whether that's Ping or a Ping partner, to get me where I need to be as quickly as I need to be? And I think a lot of times I saw kind of customers struggling was they didn't have either the time or the people to get them where they wanted to be by the date they wanted to be there. You need to scope out sufficient time and kind of phases of your project. You can't go from no SSO to passwordless FIDO in 3 months. You just can't do it. So I think a lot of organizations maybe don't put enough effort into user education, right? That's from at Regeneron. I think we did a really good job of that, right? That's from the get-go, like letting both business owners in the organization as well as end users, educating them on what's coming, right? Before it even gets implemented. Hey, we're moving to this system. This is what it's going to do. This is why it's going to make your life better, right? You're not even going to have to MFA 10 times a day. We're going to give you extended sessions. All that education stuff is also the third one. I would say you need to have ownership of that before you even get to a platform. Yeah. And then when you're picking the platform again, not only is it, okay, you've already gone through the evaluation of multiple vendors and can they support our use cases? And of course, you're going to evaluate costs. Every organization has different costs that they can spend, but also I think evaluating an organization, a vendor, on their ability to support you, right, in your journey. So how is the technical support handled at this vendor? Do they have round the clock support? Do they have platinum or elite support that I can subscribe to if I need that kind of immediate like escalation, right? Everything that you think you need. You may be a small mom and pop shop and just need a cloud IDaaS. And if the people can't log in for an hour, it's not a big deal. Or you may be a global online learning portal that needs 24 support. And if something goes wrong, it's affecting thousands of users in a specific region, you need that kind of escalation path right away. So can the organization support you and your needs, your requirements there? So that's another kind of thing that you need to evaluate, whether that's technical support or do they have a customer success team that can guide me and provide ongoing knowledge transfer. So that's another thing that I think is important. I think that was
Okay.
4.
No, I feel there is one more point that I would like to just add and summarize this is, and I think that makes life better for a lot of the product companies is first, definitely, as you mentioned, make a list of the use cases, identify all the assets that you have in the organization from users to devices to policies and compliances, like why there is a need of an. And I would say the second thing that would help all the product companies is to hire an architect or kind of get someone internally and create a current design diagram of whatever you have in your organization. What is the current authentication flow,
Sure.
authorization flow? What policies you are being using currently? It may not have the world class. That's why we need an IAM tool. If they are using legacy directories, at least request someone to evaluate that. Now, when you have that handy, I think that's where you think about staffing, resources, right? The third thing. Then if you go to vendor evaluation, the first thing that the vendor would need it is the current architecture. And if you've
Sure.
already done your research saying, okay, this is my current state, and the roadmap would say, this is the future state that I would like to go in. And these are the 10 features that I would like to implement. I think, boom, that's where it makes life easier for the product company as well as the customer. And that's where the transition, whether you talk about implementing the basics to moving, it's really things very smooth. And that's where one of the things for any company trying to select the product is trying to understand and make sure that the journey of the customer is aligned with the journey of the product roadmap so that they are able to support you
Yeah.
throughout your journey of moving from, say, using a 2FA to becoming a passwordless organization, and always support and escalation the regions that they support, right? I think that's how like the end-to-end process should be for customer versus a product.
Yeah, not knowing, taking an honest evaluation of your current landscape. And again, I say honest because it just helps to just know warts and all the bad stuff that is in your environment, right? That's only going to help whatever vendor you select to get you to where you need to be.
Absolutely. Now, as a customer success architect, right, like you have worked with different sectors of the different organization, like whether it's retail, banking. What is the current trend that is going on with a lot of customers, like whether it's banking, retail, pharmaceutical, healthcare, any organization, right? How is their journey? Where do they start from? And this is the 2020 post-COVID era, interesting problems that they are trying to solve.
Sure. Yeah. From a workforce perspective, I think most organizations are similar,
Mhm.
where they have similar goals, whether that's retail, banking, or whatever. Some have maybe stricter controls than others. But from a workforce perspective, you want folks that, like the big thing you mentioned, COVID, the big thing that we're seeing now is people don't start out working at an office, but they get hired and they're working remote, whether that's full time remote or part time remote. They get drop shipped a laptop, and they want to turn on that laptop and log in and have everything provisioned for them. Like you said before with the provisioning, the automation of that and the role that the IAM platform plays is a big thing that I'm seeing, right? You have customers that are drop shipping laptops to their new employees, and they're integrated with Microsoft 3, for example, right?
Mhm.
But hey, I can't get into Microsoft because you're making me do a MFA check that I haven't been enrolled in MFA yet. And my laptop is doing this on pilot enrollment process and trying to get me to download the things that I need for MFA, whether that's a PKI certificate or whatever. And it's failing. So that is a huge thing right now, is getting those automated flows to work in the order that they need to work in so people can get onboarded and get started right away without having to go through, okay, I need to register for this application, or I need to enroll for that application. So all of the things, whether it's the provisioning of the hardware securely to that person and whatever identity proofing is done there, and MFA enrollment, as well as, like we said, governance of provisioning to applications, whether that's through some SailPoint, IGA, and then followed up with SCIM, et cetera. So that's a huge, from the workforce side, that's one huge use case. And the other is password.
The SIAM side of the world, or we are still on
Oh
the
yeah,
workforce
but
side?
it's still on the workforce side. There's also the passwordless, which is huge, as well as zero trust. It's huge. And then on the SCIAM side, it's really more we're not shipping you a laptop. You're connecting to us with whatever device you have, whether that's a phone, tablet, computer. It's more about on the SCIM side, creating a great user experience, which we often want great user experiences on the workforce side, but it's super important on the SCIM side because from you take the user through a journey of they're a browser, they're a shopper, now they have an account, whether that's retail or healthcare or whatever, banking, right? They're still a shopper, they're still an account holder, and they have both this user lifecycle. Getting those folks onboarded and that lifecycle managed, as well as providing a smooth user experience. Those are the paramount kind of concerns for a SIAM side. And how do I give you the best user experience, but still do it securely behind the scenes where you're not even realizing that what we're doing, where we're not creating a lot of friction for you, but we're still implementing all these controls and then giving you the user experience that delights you. In terms of retail, you want to protect against things like fraud and bot accounts, et cetera, from the get-go. But also you want to, for in retail, for example, you want to make sure that your customers don't abandon their cart of items that they shopped for, because at the end of doing that, they're being asked to jump through hoops to prove who they are. So you want to implement secure technologies that can make that secure but frictionless.
Absolutely. And to just add a little layer for all our listeners who might not have understanding of the workforce and the customer side. So IAM is Workforce Identity Access Management. SIAM is the Customer Identity Access Management. And just to summarize this on a broader level, on the IAM side, we deal with employees and contractors basically, right? On the customer side, it's the customers that uses our application and consumes our data. And what are we doing there? Maybe on the WIAM side, we are integrating with applications or service for job completion, basically helping them complete the employee's job. On the what side is basically we all as a customer trying to access a product or purchase that. That's what we are doing. Where could be the customers? Anywhere in the internet. Employees could be from office, homes. And one of the thing, right, Sal, I just want to mention is why do we do? On the workforce side is basically helping you complete your task. But on the SIAM side, it's basically the main important thing here is customer experience, because those customer experience would bring in revenue. But on the workforce side, it does not bring us revenue, right? It's basically for security, compliance. That's a summary for anyone who is new to the SIAM and the WIAM world.
Yeah. And you mentioned data, right? From the workforce perspective, the organization owns your data, right? You're an employee, your email address is theirs, your identity is their data, your department that you belong to, or the entitlements that you get within applications, they can have a lot of control of your data. Whereas in the SIAM side, the data is yours, right? And as the vendor, the SIAM vendor using an IAM platform needs to not only collect the data that they need, but also you need to consent to them using that data sometimes, especially if you do a Google login or an Apple login, right? That vendor is basically asking Google to access some of the data that you own, and you apply that consent. And so your IAM platform needs to be able to handle that as well. And what's interesting is that I had customers like a large healthcare organization where you may be an employee. You may also be a customer, right? Because you have their healthcare insurance, whether that was before you joined or after you joined. You may also have kind of a scenario is no longer with that organization, but they're in an alumni kind of state where they still have ongoing benefits, right? Through maybe you've been laid off, but you have a year's worth of benefits. So now you have a different set of entitlements, right? If you're no longer an employee, you were an employee. So you have all of these different identities, right? Customer. And even as a customer, before you were a customer, you were a shopper, you were a browser looking for a healthcare plan. And to do that, you created an account. Then you purchased the account. Then maybe you are also an employee. So you have all these different identities, but the main goal of that organization is to tie those all to one identity and have different consents and authorizations. And that's a big challenge for an organization where you have both an IAM platform for workers, an IAM platform for customers, but yet you want to tie all those identities together. So you don't have Sal's work account and Sal's employee account and then Sal's alumni account. And then also, by the way, Sal has to provide consent or authorization or needs to be able to see Sal's children's records, right? Because they're in the healthcare plan. So there's a lot of different components that one IAM platform can be servicing both workforce and customer facing, and they want to consolidate all that data into one identity. So that's a really interesting kind of use case.
Data consolidation, right? I think across different platforms.
Really just identity consolidation. And then looking into the future, Ping is starting to do a lot of stuff with decentralized identity, where you own the identity in your own wallet on your app, on your phone. And that allows you to get into multiple vendors that may be leveraging that kind of credentials. The organization itself never keeps your data, right? It's just it's decentralized.
Okay. Now, as we were discussing about the different topics, right? One of the thing that is definitely interesting for me is the passwordless journey for any organization, right? So, can you walk us through the different stages an organization should go through, like we discussed about the different IDP selection process, right? Similar to that, how can an organization start their passwordless journey?
Sure. A passwordless journey is really an authentication journey, right? And you want to get to the most secure and most convenient method for your people, right? Of course, you need to start out with single sign-on, SAML, OIDC, even social login, the Facebook login, whatever. But if you're facing customer solution, but single sign-on is where you start. And then you add on the FA layers, right? Maybe now, okay, I have single sign-on and also I have the ping ID service. And when my users try to access something where MFA is required, they get a push notification on their phone. They do Face ID or fingerprint on an Android. That's great. So you're still not at passwordless, but you need that to start. And then you slowly start to phase out passwords. And you can do this in a couple different ways, right? Depending on the use case. First, workforce scenario for folks that are on your network, whether they're on your VPN or on your network, you can do Kerberos, right? So Kerberos is, without going too deep, it's basically you log into the domain on your laptop, you receive a Kerberos granting ticket from the domain controller, and then Ping leverages that to authenticate you silently in the background, right? With the Kerberos kind of adapter. So that you've gone to now not requiring users to put in their passwords every time they go into an application because you're doing Kerberos in the background silently. But also, what else can we do to reduce friction but still be secure? If we incorporate risk signals and some kind of risk analysis product, whether it's Ping's own or they partner with different vendors like threat metrics, for example. Let's incorporate a risk signal. So some kind of JavaScript runs and says, this is Ravi's PC. This is Ravi's IP, well-known IP that I see him logging in from all the time. It's not on an IP list that's known to be risky, right? That data signal is okay. The screen resolution looks the same as the last time I ran this. It's the same browser version, etc. And oh, by the way, we can do multiple different vendors, kind of MDM platform device check. Is this device enrolled in Mobile Iron or is it enrolled in Intune? Client? So you're incorporating all these risk signals to then say, we're fairly certain this is Ravi. We're not even going to require him to do MFA every time or the first factor because when we incorporate those risk signals, we're able to extend the session, the authentication session to a longer period, right? Because maybe prior to having MFA or risk signals, we were making the user log in every time. Now you can do a longer session, right? So I think as a Ping employee, I think I put my password in maybe once a month, but MFA more often. But even that, not as often as not every day. If the risk signal determined that I was coming from the same place all the time, my same PC, my same IP, and all the other checks, then we can not only phase out passwords every day, but also we can phase out MFA from only being required when the risk signal says, hey, this doesn't look normal. So that's one way to help phase out passwords. And then there's different use cases, right? So from a vendor side, from a customer use case side, we've all seen if you have an Apple TV or a Roku or something and you're trying to log into your ESPN account, they'll pop up a QR code on the screen, right? You scan that QR code. That again is passwordless, even usernameless sometimes. So you start to slowly phase out passwords. And then that can also, from the workforce side, be previously we were giving the user, when they went to log into an application, they got redirected to the IAM platform. We're giving them the username and password dialog, followed by some type of MFA. You can now implement FIDO security keys or platform authenticators like Windows Hello or you can incorporate those into your login form. So on the left side, it may have the username and password dialog, which if I, as a user, I choose to use that, I then get prompted by MFA. But on the right side of the form, there may be a button that says log in with your FIDO security key. And when I click that, then my FIDO security key, which has already been enrolled in the MFA service, that is both usernameless and passwordless, right? I touch my security key, the cryptographic exchange happens with the MFA service. It knows who I am and it sends back my ID back to the IDP, right? So now you've embraced that FIDO security key. And then additionally, now we're seeing pass keys where they're cross-browser supported. And you're no longer requiring even username and password, but also just not even requiring the username, just that FIDO login identifies the user. And it's a much stronger authentication method. So that's the journey. There's start out with adaptive authentication and then phase out your passwords from being required. And then eventually, maybe you can, especially if I think this is less prevalent in the workforce use case, but more so in the SIAM use case, where you eliminate passwords entirely. When you onboard a customer, you do some identity proofing, right? I've seen, and maybe you've seen, where you take a picture of your driver's license and you upload that, and that creates the account. And then followed by logins are always going to be a strong authentication factor after that, like they do FIDO or whatever. So you can phase out usernames and passwords. That's ultimately the goal of a lot of organizations. I don't think it's too prevalent yet, but that's where we're going.
And I think that's where Gartner is also trying to push towards the MDL, mobile driver license concept, as part of 22, some of the key things that they are publishing. And I'll just summarize this for all our listeners. So basically, we would start off with the very basic protocols, right? Like first implement SAML, OAuth, OpenID, facilitate that single sign-on, be familiar with single sign-on. And once people are used to just putting in their password once or twice based on the session of the entire browser or the application, then move on to MFA. And over there also some of the NIST framework, right, that suggests we should have multiple assurance level. You have, maybe you'll start off with SMS, move into push based, then move into biometrics, right? And then the moment you feel users are comfortable and you have a secure environment, right, then move on to the Kerberos side, where now you're trying to move truly into not having a password using Kerberos as the first stage. And I think desktop SSO is one of the concepts that I've seen personally, where we have used these kind of particular protocols. Then move on to having more trust-based or risk-based authentication. And yeah, Ping and other products do provide these functionalities where you can identify a users based on geographic locations, browser, device type. And once you understand, assess the risk level, then you can either provide a user with a username and password, or username and password plus MFA, or no, or just username with no password. I think this can summarize the entire journey. Or have I missed anything, Sal?
No, I think you summarized it well. At the end there, it's really actually usernameless and passwordless when it comes to FIDO. The user's not actually, because they've already registered their FIDO security key or whatever it is with the service, which in this case would be the MFA service that's being leveraged by the IDP. When they click that button and it prompts them to tap the security key, which is inserted into their device, that's going to send the cryptographic payload to the service and it's going to be matched up there. And the MFA service is already going to know who it is and it sends the username back to the IDP. So it's even more convenient for the end user.
Okay. And what are some of the key challenges that an organization should prepare for when they are implementing this? Apart from definitely user disruption, right? Like user experience disruption is one of the key things that I have seen when we are moving to a new technology, whether it's again passwordless or anything. That is one of the key things. But anything else that an organization should also prepare in advance to foresee some of the challenges that they may see if they are implementing these technologies?
I think it goes back to the collecting requirements kind of thing, right? You're going to have hybrid requirements. You're going to have hybrid identity types. You're going to have some passwordless solution that's SaaS based, right? But you're also going to need, like you said, passwordless solutions for on-prem or just logging into the device itself, as well as you need to cover all your different identity types, whether that's employees, but also maybe partners or organizations that you work with or customers. You need to have different solutions for different use cases, right? If I work in an office, maybe it's easy for me to incorporate Windows Hello or Touch ID or security FIDO security key for those folks. But if I'm a retail organization, my home office people can do that. But my people that work in the store maybe don't have that capability, right? So how do we provide them a secure, convenient solution? What does that look like? What kind of device will we need to be able to do that? Whether it's fingerprint scanner. And then there's also use cases where I need to be secure and I want to be passwordless, but my environment's not, it's isolated. It's not even connected to the cloud. So where's the solution there? And there are vendors that integrate things like BioKey, where they have a solution that scans your palm, and that can be on-prem software. It doesn't necessarily need. So there's different identities and different requirements, and an organization may have multiple of those, and that they need to know about upfront and then phased approach to implementing that.
Okay. And if I ask you as an architect, for example, if a customer would come to you with a requirement, how can someone either aspiring to be an architect or already is an architect improve their requirement gathering process, right? From the time they understand the requirement to the time they implement it, or even get to a point where they have acquired the customer or they have convinced the customer to use that particular. Walk us through that journey of an architect.
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know that it's any different necessarily than defining the requirements like we just discussed up front. And then it's just like implementing any other plan, right? Any other
Okay.
architecture plan, just requirements gathering, is designing a phased approach, and being able to QA and QC that along the way, and then eventually getting to where you need to be. I don't know that it's any different for the passwordless journey than it is for identity and access or any other kind of implementation, really. It's really just understanding all the different scenarios. And also, of course, the resources, the budget, right? Like it would be great if everybody was able to send a security key to all their employees, right? To do FIDO, but that comes with its own management problems, right? Managing those security keys and the distribution of them and so on and so forth. So it really comes down to the different identities and the different hybrid requirements that's going to inform your solution. Sometimes you can leverage things that are already you don't have resources to implement maybe best of breed that you want to, but you take a phased approach and do what you can.
Okay. And when I talk about three mistakes, right? If someone, as an architect, you have seen people doing, which may lead to not helping them fulfill the customer requirement, what could be those three mistakes which you have seen people doing and you would not recommend doing them?
From a total IAM platform kind of perspective?
No, as an architect or as an engineer, what are the three things that you would not recommend people to do if they want to excel in their job?
Oh, well, excel in their job. I see. It all comes out to me I don't consider myself the most technical kind of people. I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college for this. I've learned everything on the job for the most part. I know you asked like what you shouldn't do, right?
Yeah.
But you need to be curious and want to know how things work. And so if you're expecting that to flip it around, if you're expecting that a product is always going to do what it's supposed to do without any issue, I think that's a bad way to approach your job. I always approach it from a skeptical kind of position where let's get this to work. And then I would say that assuming that things work the way they were supposed to work all the time is kind of a trap you can get into. Frequently, software development teams do their best, but like sometimes a use case doesn't work out the way they thought it would, or they didn't think of a specific requirement, right? So there's that kind of like always being aware that what the product is meant to do may not always do what it needs to do. And how do you get around it? So that's one kind of thing, a pitfall I'd be wary of is don't assume. Just look at what's in front of you, look at the information that you have and make your decision based off of that, not off of what you think is supposed to happen. So that can be whether you're troubleshooting something post implementation or even when you're trying to set it up as a demo for someone, right? You can keep that. That's one thing I always try to keep in the top of my head is, okay, let me just do this, find the holes in it. So that's one thing I would say, don't assume. That's one thing. Another mistake that I think architects make, and I tried to drill this into the head of my junior architects that joined the team that I would train, right? Always take it back to, don't try and fix the problem that a customer may come to you with, right? Or a business person in your organization comes to you with. Don't say, this is broken, how do I fix it? Always take a step back and say, what are you trying to do, right? It always comes back to, what is the objective here? And maybe, yes, this thing isn't working for you, but maybe also it's not the best way to do what you're trying trying to do. But the other mistake I think people make is rushing to and wanting to help a person as quickly as possible, right? Get over their kind of issue. I think it's a mistake to try and rush into fixing something rather than understanding what their objective is from the get-go. So don't be in a rush. Don't be impatient, and always take a step back is another good thing. Don't be a rush is what not to do. And I think the last thing personally for me is don't forget that your customers or the people you're working for in the organization or trying to enable their use case or whatever, don't forget that they have a job to do, right? And they're coming to you for help, and maybe they're not as receptive to what you're saying to them, or they're not doing what you thought you told them to do, right? To fix their issue or to design their solution properly. You have to have empathy, and you can't forget that these people have a job to do and you're there to help them do their job. And yeah, they may be the IAM person at their job, but they may also be the Active Directory person, the F5 person, the DevOps manager, and they have 10 different million things that they're doing in a day, right? And you need to be empathetic and remember that. So don't forget that you're there basically in an architect or hands-on IAM engineer role. Your job is really at the end of the day, helping other people achieve their goals, right? Especially in an architecture role. Your job is to help people achieve their goals. And it's easy to forget that, right? Or I've seen colleagues be like, this person doesn't listen to me. And I'm sure I've done it too, right? This person's not doing what I told them to do. They're being difficult, but maybe they're just not able to give the attention that they need to because they have 10 different other things they're working on. So don't forget that we're all, working to the same goal here. And your main role as an architect is to help people achieve a solution and whatever that takes. So don't forget that's really the end goal here. Yes, you're being compensated, you're being paid, you have a job for what you know how to do, but also the important thing is being able to convey that to someone and meet them where they need to be to understand that. So if their knowledge is basic, you need to break it down into simpler steps. Whereas if their knowledge is advanced, maybe they just need a quick answer and you need to let them run with that. But just knowing your audience, being empathetic and not forgetting why you're there, which at the end of the day is to help them.
Agreed. So just to summarize this, I think first thing is be curious. Don't expect the product to behave the way it has been designed to. Definitely there are different ways in which it can be done. Don't be impatient, right? While talking to customers, just try to understand the use case before even trying to solve it. The third is having empathy towards all the customers because that is who we are. We are here to just solve their problem and could be like we are the only point of contact for them, right? So we should be empathetic towards their situation, put ourselves into their shoes and try to think it in a broader way.
Yeah, that's
So
right. I think all those things are very important to being an architect. Now, they're not the technical skills per se, like they're not the most, they're soft skills, right? But I think they're mostly more important than the technical skills because you can always go find the answer technically from a colleague, from documentation, from whatever. But if you're not the type of person that can convey that information and help the person through, that's what separates you.
whoa, that was a discussion. I hope you all have enjoyed the discussion. We have literally covered so many interesting things: SCIM, customer IAM, workforce IAM, data management, identity proofing, FIDO. What does an architect do's and don'ts? I really want to thank Sal again for doing this with us, right? And again, not to forget, there is part 3 also. So stay tuned and thank you very much for all your support. And I will ensure that I'll bring these kind of more interesting discussions through the podcast series for all of you. So with that, I wrap up today's session. Thank you very much.